Good morning. Good morning. We've got a great program today. I hope everybody has electricity at their house now. Anybody that doesn't have power? Beauty of Rotary. Mid, did Kelly bring you a generator? Oh, sorry. Any UVA fans in the house? All right. They're too smart to be loud. Ms. Middleton has our invocation, pledge, and Rotary moment.
Okay. In Rotary, you get to experience this international thing, and folks will come from overseas and visit with you, and I forget what it's called. You can tell I'm real versed in all the terminology, but it was an exchange, and this gentleman, this group came from Taiwan, and he owned companies in Taiwan, super nice guy, humble guy, and he stayed at my house one night, and it was a Wednesday night, and at the time I had a Bible study going on. Well, this guy didn't have a religion. I said, are you, what is your religion? He goes, oh, I'm not Buddha. He goes, I believe in Rotary. He goes, Rotary is my religion. And he sat in for the first time with my buddies, and we were discussing some chapter in the Bible. And he thoroughly enjoyed it and was moved. It was the first time he'd ever been around Christians in his life. So I just wanted to mention a special moment I had in Rotary, in a faithful moment. But his religion was Rotary, and I said, that's a great start. Please bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the time of the season. We claimed spring last Saturday, Lord, and we sure hope it gets here fast. But we thank you, Father, for more important things. We thank you for our beliefs. We thank you for our families. We thank you for organizations and for countries that allow us to do what we believe is right. And we thank you for this glorious country that we're in. I thank you for Rotary, and that it allows you to interact with so many different folks who truly have a heart for others. They think of others first before themselves. And it's such a joy to be able to be a part of an organization that does that. And I'm thankful for our Gate City outreach, but I'm also thankful for all the many different outreaches each one of the lights in this room have. Mentoring young men and women, serving their pet projects, and then allowing them to share them, and hopefully others will catch their passion. Just thank you, Father, for all our blessings, and continue them for our sakes. Amen. Amen. Stand up. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rotary.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Care all concerned. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Erica Parker has our Sergeant at Arms. Erica.
Good morning. We are so excited to have a couple of visitors with us here today. We have Don Messenger, who's visiting with us again. We also have Rob Nim, who's a visitor of Randy Elliott. We also have a couple of special guests with us. These are visiting Rotarians. We have Aaron Birch. Aaron, would you stand for us? Aaron is visiting from Clovis High Plains, New Mexico. And we also have with her Carrie Collins. Carrie, if you would stand. Carrie's visiting from Auburn, New York. We're so glad you could come in special guest, who is our speaker for the day. They'll be introduced to us a little bit later. All right?
Thank you, Erica. Erica, anything you want to talk about Shadows Day, or are you probably tired of talking about it?
I am pleased to say that I have everybody match but Buster. I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you. He's the only one I have not been able to match. But I am so determined to get that done.
And I shadow Buster.
So by the end of the day tomorrow, each of you that have volunteered will have your matches information along with their contact numbers. And I just encourage you over the weekend to reach out to them in preparation for next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Buster, maybe it's the police background check. March 15th, which I think is Sunday, is the deadline to get the low price on district conference, which is the first weekend in May for Grove Park Inn. I'm going to send an email to the whole club. You can still register after that, but it gets more expensive. So don't forget, if you have any plan to go, it'll be a great weekend, a great celebration at a beautiful place at a great time of year. So mark your calendars to get in there by Sunday. Dennis Marcotte, you have a presentation today.
I do. Erica Parker, please come forward.
I didn't do it.
Yes, you did.
Actually, you did.
You did everything.
You did everything. All right, this is a great moment for Erica because she has rejoined Rotary, as you know, we got started pretty quickly. We can officially give her her blue badge.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dennis. Congratulations, Erica. Mid, one of the things you have to do to get that badge is the 4-way test. Erica, would you please give them your red badge? One other, I mentioned the 15th for district conference. The other deadline on the 15th is the RYLP, the Rotary Youth Leadership Program. Sarah Doggett is collecting those. Randy, you need to.
Yeah, my son's going to apply.
All right, so make sure you get that to Sarah. The board is actually going to meet Monday morning to review those applications.
Since she's not here, can I give it to you?
If you can give them to me and I'll give them to Sarah if you have them. Okay. Other announcements. Dan, where's Dan Quinn? Dan, did you go to Pets?
I did go to
They
bed.
have it in all that ice and
It
snow?
snowed a bit.
It did.
That's what I'm.
Emily said she made it Saturday.
Not a bad thing.
So is your head full of Rotary knowledge?
I know everything about Rotary. It's all good.
It's all good. All right. It runs in your family.
I did the 4 just backwards now.
He was a slow student. I had it in one of my sections.
He did. Pay attention.
He did. He was good.
All right. Any other announcements from the floor?
Happy
How about
dollars.
rounds? Buster?
All right. We got happy dollars. All right.
I got 2.
All right.
First, I was told, since I put that smart aleck comment out there last week about being a child with $1 chip bill. The other is I've been here 7 years, and we finally got a Wolfpacker speaking.
Yes. We had to find some that could actually speak and we could understand. It took all these years just to get it. That cost you $1. Hey, look.
Take your $1 back.
See what I did today. I got a Carolina blue sweater. I'm going to wear.
I got a happy dollar, but I've only got a 20, so Kelly Carroll's gonna pay my dollar. For the money for some tickets. Thank you, Kelly. He's actually got my dollar. My dollar is for my dad, who, anybody know what a syncope is? Okay, well, he had a syncope episode. That's when you pass out. Luckily, he was sitting down at the time. We went, took him to the cardiac doctor at LeBauer, and long story short, Monday he had a pacemaker put in, and he's like a Timex now. So, wow, it went well.
Very good.
Thanks, Kelly.
This is $50 for a Chip person. I sent out an email saying my son studied with Death Valley in about 2 days, and does anyone have a satellite phone? And Chip came through, really appreciated. I've been actually trying to find a rental company in Las Vegas to rent a satellite phone because my son said, yeah, well, the other guys don't think we need it even though we're going to do backpacking in Death Valley where there's no cell range. So Chip, I really appreciate it. He had a unit that will allow him to be tracked and send in a chopper for $15,000.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to push that button unless you really, really need it.
Let's see if this works. The alcohol involved. Y'all watch this. Y'all watch this.
Here's the question. Why in the world?
Who gets the bill? You do.
If you have a son named Wild, we did a bicycle trip to the beach, or you're going to drive like 70 miles from the nearest paved road in Arizona in 110 degrees.
Or moon the president.
It might be something. So anyway, we like to get out there and do stuff. And today, Carrie and I are going up to Asheville. She's having the grand opening of Run Home Asheville, which has been about a year coming. So actually have some properties under management, things are going on. And so anyway, we're off to Asheville.
One of my dollars is, this is a service and business organization. I had Kim come out and do a LinkedIn presentation for my 10-man sales force. Now, I think only 2 were actually listening, but some great nuggets. And I really encourage you, if you really want to dive in, have LinkedIn be a source for you to succeed, I would highly recommend Kim. He's basically, he's an expert on it. I really appreciate that. And also, Kelly came to the rescue. I did an APB out. I got 3 girls under 3. We didn't have any power. Kelly had his thing all juiced up. And Kelly, the reason I couldn't get the power on, I had it on choke. But the other dollar is the ACC season. My father played for UVA in '54 in the very first ACC tournament. And, it was really special. My favorite memory was '04 when they were celebrating the 50th, and he came out at halftime, and only 2 guys had died, so it was pretty amazing. And it was really special seeing him out there, and so I'm pulling for the Wahoos today, of course, but anyway, that's my ACC moment. Cool. Sure.
Well, you know how if you lost power and you ran into people all the time and they said, oh, I never lost power. Well, Grandpappy always used to say, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And while you're at it, put your face in between them and save you a lot of trouble.
Go sit down.
Don't sit down, that's right.
Buster,
I got to introduce our speaker today. Y'all like that I wore the red? Legend has it that Van Williford was so anxious to sign a letter of intent to play basketball at NC State that he had his mother drive him to Pinehurst and track down Wolfpack coach Norm Sloan on the golf course. Is that true, man?
That's basically. Do I pay $1 now?
No. Van Williford was a skinny 6'6" forward, very talented, who had led his Fayetteville High School team to back-to-back state championships in '65 and '66. But he had been lightly recruited by colleges and had dim prospects to play Division I school. Although Van dreamed of playing in Reynolds Coliseum, state coach Press Maravich had no interest in Van because his own son, Pete Maravich, was set to become the next Wolfpack star. But it turns out that Pete was as academically stupid as he was physically talented. So he and his dad headed to the Southeastern Conference, where you didn't have to meet the rigorous academic standard of having an 800 on your SAT. Incoming coach Norm Sloan needed a recruit, and at the suggestion of a Wolfpack alum, Van was offered a scholarship. After a mediocre freshman year and the fear of being redshirted, which most likely would have meant years on the bench, Van spent the summer in Fayetteville working on his game every day. A half dozen games into his sophomore year, Van earned a spot in the starting lineup, a big surprise for everyone, including Van. Legend also has it that Van was so nervous his first game that he put his gym shorts on backwards. Is that true?
I'll pay another $1.
Van went on to become a first-team All-ACC selection as a junior, and key to comeback that led the Wolfpack to an ACC championship his senior year over the highly favored South Carolina Gamecocks in double overtime, one of the great games in ACC history. In 1970, Van graduated from NC State with a degree in industrial engineering. After a year with the American Basketball Association Cougars, whoever went to a Cougars game? Who saw Van play in the Cougars? Van went to
You didn't see me play very much.
And, he served in the Army as a first lieutenant on the general staff at the John Kennedy Special Forces Center at Fort Bragg. Among his honors and accomplishments, he was the 1970 ACC Tournament MVP. He was an all-conference ACC first team in 69 and 70. He was an all-Eastern Regional first team in 1970. He had his jersey honored at PNC Arena. He held 5 scoring records upon graduation until this kid named David Thompson came around. And, his points per game in NCAA tournament play was 35.5 points a game.
Wow.
He was voted by the student body to receive the H.C. Kennett Award for the most outstanding athlete, and he is also a member of the Cumberland County Sports Hall of Fame. In 1973, Van purchased, I think it was called Vesco at the time. It's now called Atlantic Coast Toyota Lift, a material handling company, and you can't buy a Camry there. But he did offer to provide forklifts for our next forklift races.
Red one.
He is the CEO of the company, and he is an original organizer and member of the board of directors of the Bank of North Carolina, which is how we found out about him, because he's Tom Nelson's friends with him. So please join me with a warm Gate City Rotary welcome for Van Williford.
Thank you, Buster. After Buster's comment about finding someone that could read, I guess the gloves are off.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, I could have taught all my NC State jokes. I had a ton of them, but
I understand. The good news about, the state, when we had classes, we actually had classrooms. I've been doing this a long time. I've been really, really careful. When you get my age, it's nice to have a captive audience because I have a lot of opinions. And I'm going to talk about a couple of experiences in ACC tournament basketball in particular, and then probably open the floor up to some questions because there's so many different things to talk about. But I was fortunate enough to participate in 3 ACC tournaments. In my day, freshmen couldn't play varsity ball. They outlawed the dunk because I was such a high flyer, along with a guy named Lou Alcindor from UCLA. So you couldn't dunk when I was in college. You couldn't dunk when David Thompson was in college. So think about the implications there. I played in 3 ACC tournaments, fortunate to play in 2 finals, my sophomore and my senior year. In my sophomore year, we made the record books. In the semifinals, I was tied for the leading scorer on our team with a victory over Duke, and I had 3 points.
Oh, right.
That game, for those of you who don't remember, the final score was 12-10. The implication there basically is at the time Duke was ranked number 5 in the nation. My senior year, we beat South Carolina in double overtime in the ACC Tournament Championship, and they were ranked number 2 in the nation. The significance of that is at that point in time, if you didn't win the ACC Tournament Championship, or the ACC Championship, which was the tournament winner, you did not get to go to the NCAA. So a number 5 team in the nation did not play for the national title. The number 2 team in the nation did not play for the national title. A lot more emphasis on winning the tournament than there is today. Good or bad, I guess you have to make your own decision. I kind of like the old way, but old guys don't like to change. But an interesting scenario, in addition to that, many years even before those years, the NIT tournament was a bigger tournament than NCAA. About the time that I was playing, the NIT was still a pretty big tournament. So if you didn't win the ACC tournament and go to the NCAA, you went to the NIT and played. South Carolina, because the Eastern Regionals were held in Columbia, South Carolina, and they were a host team, were prohibited from going to the NCAA, to the NIT. So their season was over. Mike Lewis, who was an All-American center at the Duke, on Duke in the 12-10 game, who lives in Greensboro now, is a good friend, and I talked to Mike later about it and didn't see things from his side. But after they lost that game, they voted in the locker room not to accept the NIT bid. And he told me that was one of the biggest wrong decisions that in his athletic career. He said because when they decided not to go to the NIT, their season was over, and he was a senior, his career was over. Had they gone to NIT, they most likely would have won it, and they would have gone out with a much better feeling, warm and fuzzy about being a winner rather than losing. So the tournament, do you have to win the tournament to go to the NCAA anymore? No. Is that good or bad? Everybody's got to make their own decisions, but it's going to be interesting this year in particular as the league grows. I will make one prediction. The team that wins the ACC tournament and the team that wins the NCAA will not miss 12 free throws in a ball game. I promise you, anybody in this room that played any form of organized basketball, half of us can shoot free throws better than what we see in college basketball today. It is absolutely pitiful. The players today are much better athletes, but fundamentally, they in old school tradition, they lack a lot to be desired. He was talking about Pete Maravich. Pete was a great player, Pistol Pete. We played against each other in high school before he migrated to LSU, and I appreciate the fact that he did that. But think about it. No three-point shot, no time clock, and Pete averaged 44 points a game. T.J. Warren, NC State, great player, is third in the nation in scoring at 24 points a game. So there are a lot of great athletes. They just don't shoot the ball very well, and they have a lot of things that make it a lot difference in today's game. A game I don't like as much, but that's kind of interesting. I think I would like to maybe just open up the floor to some questions. I would like to make one more comment and then let people find out what they would like to hear about. But the league expansion, the number of teams added to the ACC is about two things. A, it's about survival, and B, it's about money. The reason that the survival part is if you didn't get bigger, you were going to go away. So I think we had to do that as a conference. But the other side of it, it's all about the money on that side of it. And that's good and bad. But think about, there are teams in the ACC that have never won an ACC tournament. And it's going to be a lot tougher today with the number of teams and the quality of teams that are going to be in the league. So it's all about the money. Is it good or bad? It's hard to say. I like the old school. If Wake Forest, who won last night, were to win the tournament this year, they're going to play 5 games. in 5 days. Duke, Carolina, Virginia, Syracuse. If they should win the ACC tournament this year, they're going to play 3 games. So there's a huge advantage and a lot more importance on finishing well in regular conference play, so you have the right seed to have that advantage. Is that fair? It's hard to say. If you're a Wake Forest fan, probably not. If you watched any of the games last night, there's a couple of free throws that some people would like to have back that would change the outlook. The free throw thing is just, it totally baffles me. NC State lost 5 games by 1 point this year. I don't know that they'll make the NCAA unless they make a really, really strong run in the tournament, maybe even have to win it to go to the NCAA. For 5 or 6 free throws, they'd be locked, so it's kind of interesting to say the least. I'm going to open the floor up to questions. If there's anything particular that somebody would like to ask a question about, I'd be glad to give you my opinion anyway.
How many teams were in the NCAA tournament before they changed the rules?
32.
32. Okay,
16.
so it's essentially doubled.
It was 16 to 74.
Right, because actually, for example, when we played, I played in 1970, we had a first round bye. So we automatically qualified for the Sweet 16. We played in Columbia. When we were in Columbia, we were there for probably 2 days before the first game, practicing, etc. Everywhere we went, we had to have a police escort because the people in Columbia were not real happy. They would literally stop traffic so we could cross the street. And if we went to a movie, we had police escort. But we played, we lost in the first round to St. Bonaventure. They had a center named Bob Lanier, who was a sophomore. All-American, great player, great pro. One of the things you may not know about Bob Lanier was his shoe size was 22 and a half. So you can imagine what that was like. We did a great job against him. We held him at 28, which was his average. But we lost to St. Bonaventure in the first round in the Sweet 16. The way things worked back then was there was a consolation game. So we played Niagara with Calvin Murphy, who in the consolation game. The importance of the consolation game was depending on your record in the NCAA, you either got that automatic bye into the Sweet 16 or not, and so it was important to the ACC to have that additional win in the record of the NCAA. We beat Niagara with Calvin Murphy, so we kind of helped the ACC in that regard at that time. Interesting, a question that may come up about paying players. Should players be paid today? And in my opinion, the answer is yes. It needs to be controlled, it needs to be minimal, but I'll give you an example. Norm Sloan, my coach, great mentor, wrote a book after he retired from coaching, and he actually noted in this book, and he touched on that subject, but he wrote about a football player out of Florida who went to Georgia, and Coach Sloan ended his coaching career at the University of Florida. But the #1 running back prospect in the state of Florida in football went to Georgia. He shows up on campus in Georgia. He arrived on the public transportation, Trailway bus, and he had his clothes in a paper bag, literally. So now he's on campus. He is eating 3 meals a day for the first time probably. He's growing because of his age. He's in a weight program, a strength training program. He's growing, he's getting bigger, and he's supposed to be a student athlete and migrate into the student atmosphere. He has no money. He can't buy clothes. He can't go on a date. He can't take a girl to the movie. He can't have a pizza because he physically, financially, from the family aspect, has no money. And he can't get a job because that's against the rules. And that's part of what's wrong in this scenario. It doesn't need to be tens of thousands of dollars in some fancy contract. But the NCAA is making ungodly amounts of money from NCAA athletics and the TV contracts and et cetera. One of their officials even said at one time said, we're gonna have to get creative in how we spend this money, because that's how much they have. So my opinion is, the players should be paid a controlled, reasonable amount for those reasons. Calvin Murphy, who played at Niagara, All-American, great pro, wasn't on scholarship at Niagara. The reason he wasn't on scholarship was he had a job. And he would rather have a job than be on scholarship. You know what his job was? He twirled baton at the halftime of a Buffalo Bills game. He was the national baton twirling champion when he was in college. Nobody knew that. That'd been a great trivia question. But so that's my personal opinion about paying players. Should players go pro early? Yes. If it were my son and he had an opportunity to sign a multi-year guaranteed contract, then I would suggest that he go back, he do that. If he wants the college education, which I think is incredibly important, you go back and get it at a later date. There's some interesting examples of that. Vince Carter, who played at Carolina, was a great pro, went back and got his degree because he thought it was important. David Thompson, who was a great player, went back and got his college degree, and actually got his degree and walked on stage at the same year that his daughter got her college degree instead. So you have to respect that scenario. I remember Shaquille O'Neal asked the president of the university at LSU, when are you going to hang my jersey in the arena? And the president said, when you graduate. He went back and got his degree. And you have to respect, and he said because he told his parents that he would. So those things are important, and education's important. Les Robinson, another story you don't know because the press, the Greensboro Daily Tar Heel doesn't print stuff like this. Les Robinson coaches at State. All the coaches have these large shoe contracts. And Les Robinson had a shoe contract. Well, his shoe contract had two stipulations. One, based on his requirement, how much he got paid was tied to the graduation rate of his players. Secondly, half of the money in his contract went to a scholarship fund at NC State for those college athletes from State that had used their eligibility up but had not graduated. So he put a scholarship fund together so those players, those athletes in all the sports, not just basketball, could come back to school and get their degree, which is very admirable because education is incredibly important, and they are student athletes. Most of them are, and it's important that they focus on that and we think about things. Any more questions? Somebody's got to have some question. I'll tell a really bad story.
Well, what are your thoughts on the location of the ACC tournament? Of course, we love it here, and with the expansion, is this the best place to have it, or do you go into the thought of it traveling every couple of years?
Well, I'm old school. I like it here. When I played 3 years, all 3 years it was in Charlotte. The few times it's gone away from here, I've attended a few tournaments in Maryland, and that went pretty well. They had they moved the tournament to Florida, and that did not go particularly well. They didn't sell out, so it's difficult. I think Boeheim wanted to move it to New York right away, and that didn't go over too well, so he rescinded a little bit on that statement. But it's hard to say. As the conference grows and Louisville comes in and Pittsburgh and Syracuse and Notre Dame, maybe moving it around, I think that they're not careful, they'll lose the flavor. We had the first tournament here for years. Most conferences do tournaments now. The main reason they do tournaments, the money. But still, if the money brings it to the right place and does the right things, that's good. But I would not like to see it go away. I think if you go play in New York and Wake Forest, who was a 12th or 13th seeded team, where their fans going to go? Probably only the real diehards. So I think it's going to, to me, the nucleus of the ACC is the Big Four and North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia is market, but It'll change, it'll follow the money, in my opinion, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. I was just going to ask a couple of questions. Being a state fan, what do you think about the current coach, Mark Godfrey? What do you think his chances are for maybe getting another championship? We'll get both of us in there. Well,
Coach Godfrey's a great recruiter. I think he's a pretty good coach. I'd like him to teach free throws a little better. I've offered to help, but they just. But it remains to be seen. That the hard thing is going to be for a lot of the schools, and I have this concerns about state. If we're going to be able to recruit the talent that's necessary to win a national championship and to be in the top 4 echelon of the ACC. Louisville, Syracuse, Duke pretty much gets any of the players they want. When I say any of the players, you've got Kansas and you've got Kentucky, you've got Carolina, you've got Duke, you've got Syracuse, Louisville. Those schools kind of have this aura that it's easier to recruit. We have more of a challenge in some ways. Carolina, in my opinion, needs to be careful. They're going to lose a little bit of that opportunity as well. But it's going to be hard to get that way. Our conference is already so tough. You have to play everybody. It used to be you have to play everybody twice. Now you play a really, really tough schedule. So it's hard to go outside and play quality opponents as well and then have a record that's going to get you the NCAA. So it's going to be tough, and we've got a ways to go. We're going to lose Warren, I think. He needs to go get the money. He's a great player. But if he leaves, I'm not sure if the other team left, how many points State can score right now, to be honest with you.
That was my next question. You think he's
I can't imagine why he wouldn't. I mean,
okay.
If he wants an education, he can afford an education and come back and get an education.
Right.
And there's so many things that can happen, blow out a knee. I mean, you look at some players that didn't go pro, that regret it, and you look at some that didn't go pro when they weren't ready. So I think you have to have the lottery pick, first round, guaranteed money to consider it. But after that, I think you have to give it some serious considerations.
Who'd you consider your toughest competitors, and is there anybody you really didn't like playing against?
The toughest teams when I was there were the Tar Heels and actually South Carolina Gamecocks. I mean, they were, Frank McGuire was the head coach, and Paul Dietzel, if you know the football side of things, was the athletic director. When they lost to us in the tournament and did not get an NCAA bid, first of all, Frank McGuire they would not come out of the dressing room and accept the second place trophy. His thought was, I didn't know that was the process. I'm not buying that. But they announced at that time they were going to get out of the ACC. They had to play one more season because the schedules were set, and oddly enough, that next year they won the ACC tournament.
Oh.
But I think it was a huge mistake for them. I mean, if they want to be a football power, which they are certainly pretty strong, they might be in the wrong league for that too. I'm not sure, but I hate that happened. But they were the toughest.
Can you describe what it felt like to go out on the ACC tournament final game on the floor as you're going on the floor as a player, what it feels like?
Yeah, it's an exciting scenario. For so long, growing up in North Carolina, I was from Fayetteville originally, so I've been an ACC fan, an NC State fan all my life. And so the opportunity to participate in that is really an exciting, life-changing memory. But at the same time, as well coached as we were not the most talented team, talent-wise. We had, in my opinion, as good a coach as anybody in the league or in the country. So we were always so well prepared. It really was an exciting scenario, but the pressure was there all those years. You win or you're out. So I think you appreciate it more after the fact than in the moment. At least that's how I felt about it.
From your standpoint, what makes a great basketball coach? What qualities?
I think he has to have discipline. I think he has the right core values. I think he has to be a good recruiter. He has to be a great game coach, and I question some game coaching in today's, but it's a different game. I'll give you an example. Coach Sloan had a team meeting and before each season, but he goes in, he says, these are the rules. You know, your hair's gonna be this length, your shirt's gonna be tucked in at practice, you're gonna have your ankles taped or wrapped, and these are the rules. He said, if you don't wanna do that, that's okay. Pay your own way. And so that was the way it was. There were two ways with Coach Sloan, which I greatly respect. His way or the highway. But he was a great coach. You went to class, you made the grades. They made sure you were making the grades because it was, you know, they knew if you were having academic issues in any subject. Tutors were available. I mean, it was a system, but it was a working system. And we had a great deal of successful academic players as well as basketball players that have done pretty well in life after the fact. So those things are really important in my opinion. There's a lot of, you know, for the longest time, Coach Krzyzewski would not hang a player's jersey in Cameron if they didn't graduate. Well, the whole environment's changed a lot now, so those things are different. So there's a lot of challenges there, but then you have to be a game coach. You have to be able to adapt to what's going on in the situation. In my opinion, I think Boeheim's a great coach in his zone defense is phenomenal, but the second time around in the league, they haven't been as successful. And that's because the coaches that have seen it once are prepared for it the second time around. And an example, and this is could get to be a long story, 12-10 against Duke. I mean, literally, Bill Kretzer, CEO of Unified, Bill passed away from a heart attack, literally did this for a ball game. I mean, people are screaming and throwing stuff on the floor. The announcer for Bill Curry, it was pre-Woody Durham. I don't know if you know who Bill Curry was, but he was doing the game and said, this is about as exciting as artificial insemination. This was in 1968, and they pulled the plug on it. I mean, so, the thing about it is, we never talked about and never practiced holding the ball prior to that game. Never. Mike Lewis, All-American, Missoula, Montana, great player at Duke, had dominated us twice inside because I was playing center at 6'6". Bill Kretzer was playing kind of a double post at 6'6". So when we went down our offense, if you didn't shoot, you just kept changing positions. We call it continuity. So the plan was to start with Bill and I at the guard spots and the guards inside to get Lewis out from under the basket where you control the boards and get him a lot more movement and hopefully make a difference in the game. The game started and he was standing on the basket. He didn't come out. So Sloan blows his, stand right there. That's how the whole thing happened. Right before the end of the first half, we were on the floor, kind of, everybody going kind of crazy, thinking about at least I wouldn't have to take a shower after the game. We felt pretty well. And one of the guards for Duke was a guard named Tony Baroni. Tony was about 5'6". I think the program said he was 5'8", but he wasn't 5'8". But he's on the floor, so right before the halftime, Sloan calls Eddie Beanbach and I over to the bench. So we go over to the bench, so the game's still going on. And so Baroni goes over there with us. You know, he's got nothing to do, so three of us are standing there. Coach Sloan says, you know, with 15 seconds to go, this is the play I want you to run. And Eddie says, Coach, he said, Baroni's listening to this. You know, do you want to call a timeout? And Sloan says, no. He said, we call a timeout. They'll take that little bleep, bleep out of the game, and with him in the game, we can do anything we want. So Baroni gets mad, storms back out on the floor, and we ran the play. And so, you know, that's a game coach. That's a game coach. Against South Carolina, number 2 in the nation, had gone undefeated in the ACC in regular season, which is really rare. I think it's maybe only been done a few times, even today. We're down 11 in the first half. in the ACC Tournament Championship game. We're down 11. And they went to a zone. Coach Sloan says, pull the ball out. So we go out, we're holding the ball, we're down 11 in the first half. And Frank McGuire's ego was so big that nobody's going to hold the ball on him. They came out of the zone. We cut it to 4 at halftime. Second half, we're down 7. And they go to a zone, and Coach Sloan says, pull the ball out. So we're standing out there holding the ball, and again, his ego's not going to let anybody hold the ball on him. He could have sat there when the clock ran out. Of course, we wouldn't have done that. They came out again, and we wound up beating them in double overtime, and they don't go to the NCAA or the NIT. That's game coaching, and that's what makes a great coach. I can remember Dean Smith, great coach. He
Could you repeat that? Well,
well, you know, Dean's got some real health issues, and that's unfortunate. But it was several years ago, and one of the tough years. You know, Dean had broken his leg. I don't know if you knew that or not. He had fallen off a ladder at the Dean Dome trying to get his name off the Dean Dome. don't start with me. I've been down this road before. But I promise you, with 8 seconds to go and down by 4, he had a plan to win the game. And he won a lot of games because of that. I think Krzyzewski was a game coach. Sloan was a great game coach. And I'm not sure all of them are. You know, it's interesting. Virginia. I know we have some Virginia fans here, right? Virginia is got the #1 seed and a really good basketball team because they actually make free throws. They don't turn the ball over. They're incredibly well coached, and they have a very strong plan about what to do in every situation. And that's why they're a pretty good basketball team. And to be honest with you, they probably don't have quite the talent that some of the teams in the league do. But they're going to be very successful because fundamentally, they're a whole lot better than the other teams. Anybody in this room could play guard if you get to do this all day long with the ball. You know, that's absurd. They carry the ball all the time. The rules have changed because when players started doing that, the only way you could guard them was to hold on to them. And so now they decide you can't hold on to them. So every time you touch somebody outside, it's a foul. That's why there's 50 foul shots a game. The games take 3.5 hours. If I were coaching, my philosophy would be drive to the basket every single time because you're going to get fouled. The flaw in that is the guys today can't shoot free throws, but it's a great play. Drive to the basket, put them in foul trouble. Free throws are critical, and kind of see what happens. I'm probably run out of time. Any more questions?
The best team of NC State's ever.
Oh, 74. 74 with David and Tommy, and those guys are just incredible team. Very well coached. And had a great scenario. If you're talking about going back one quick minute about free throws, 83 when State won the national championship.
Yeah, right.
If Pepperdine makes anything from free throw line, we go home. So it's really, really important. I have one more question.
Yeah, do you have any colorful lasers, say like Norm Sloan or somebody?
Well, I've got pictures of him with his Magnus blazer on.
Like a red one or something.
Oh, I've got lots of red stuff. Yeah, my neck's red. In case you didn't notice, I got my collar pulled up. But it's a great time. I appreciate your opportunity.